The airport was busy, filled with the noise of rolling suitcases, loud announcements, and families rushing to catch their flights. Among all the hustle and bustle, one boy stood quietly near the gate. His name was Tyrell, and he was just 10 years old. He had a small backpack, a nervous look on his face, and a big dream in his heart. This was the first time he was flying alone, and he couldn't help but feel a little out of place. He looked up at the large sign above him, Flight 45, to New York City, boarding in 10 minutes. Tyrell swallowed his nerves. He had been so excited when his mom told him she had booked this trip. He had never been on a plane before. The flight was a special gift from her for working hard in school. His mom had told him to be brave, and Tyrell was trying his best to follow that advice. He straightened his shirt and took a deep breath. Just as he was about to step forward, a woman in a uniform approached him. She had a stern look on her face, and her eyes quickly scanned his face, as if trying to figure out why he was standing there alone. Tyrell looked up at her, his hands clutching his backpack strap a little tighter. "Excuse me," the woman said, her voice cold. "Do you have your boarding pass?" Tyrell nodded. He had the boarding pass in his pocket, just like his mom had told him. He pulled it out and handed it to her, trying to look confident. The woman took the pass and glanced at it quickly. She muttered, looking him up and down. "First class." "Really?" Tyrell blinked. "Yes, ma'am. My mom booked it for me," he said, his voice soft but clear. The woman raised an eyebrow, clearly not believing him. "Your mom booked you a first-class seat." She looked at him like she had never seen anything so strange. "How old are you exactly?" "I'm 10, Tyrell said, his voice a little shaky. He had hoped the flight attendants wouldn't question him, but now he felt even more nervous. The woman didn't smile. She glanced at the pass again and then back at him, her lips pressed into a thin line. "I'll need to check this. Wait here," she said, turning her back to him without another word. Tyrell stood still, confused and more nervous than ever. He watched as the woman walked to the counter, talking to another worker, pointing at him and the boarding pass. He couldn't hear what they were saying, but he saw them glance back at him a few times. It felt like everyone in the airport was staring at him now, and he wasn't sure why. The other workers seemed to be talking quickly. One of them looked around, then walked toward Tyrell and stopped in front of him. "Come with me," the man said. His voice was firm but not unkind. "We need to get some things sorted out." Tyrell's heart started to race. What was going on? His mom had booked the ticket, paid for it with her hard-earned money, and now they were making him feel like he didn't belong here. He walked slowly behind the man, trying to stay calm. His small shoes clicked against the tile floor with each step. He didn't know what to think. His mom had always told him that good things happen when you work hard. So why did it feel like he was being punished for just trying to be brave? As they walked down the hallway toward the gate, Tyrell saw other passengers looking at him. He overheard whispers. "Who does he think he is, sitting in first class?" One woman muttered, shaking her head. Another man frowned, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Is he even old enough to fly alone? Tyrell felt his face grow hot. He tried to hold his head up high, but inside, he was shrinking. The whispers grew louder as he walked past the other passengers. His stomach twisted in knots. When they finally reached the gate, the airline staff surrounded him. They spoke in low voices, pointing at Tyrell and his boarding pass. Tyrell wanted to speak, to tell them the truth, that his mom was a strong, smart woman who had worked hard to make this happen for him. But he didn't have the words. He was too young, and no one seemed to believe him. It was then that he saw something that made his heart skip a beat. In the corner of the waiting area, he saw a woman standing, staring directly at him. She was tall and wore a black business suit. Her hair was neatly tied back, and she carried herself with a powerful, confident energy. Tyrell's eyes widened in recognition. That was his mom. But the airline staff didn't see her yet. They were still discussing his boarding pass, still unsure of what to do with him. Tyrell's heart beat faster. His mom had promised she would come to the airport early to make sure everything was okay. She was always there for him. He knew she would fix this, but it still hurt to see how quickly the staff judged him. Suddenly, one of the workers turned and saw his mom. He froze. The woman in the suit stepped forward, her eyes never leaving Tyrell. She moved with purpose, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. The staff parted for her as she walked toward her son, but they didn't know who she was yet. Tyrell's mom stopped just behind him. She looked at him with a warm, reassuring smile, and he instantly felt better. Everything would be okay now. She was here. As the woman in the black suit walked toward Tyrell, the staff seemed to grow more uncomfortable. Their eyes flickered nervously between each other, unsure of what to do. They had been so focused on questioning the boy that they hadn't noticed who his mother was. Tyrell's heart skipped a beat when his mom finally reached him. She placed a hand gently on his shoulder, her touch warm and familiar. Tyrell felt a wave of relief wash over him. Everything was going to be okay now. His mom was here. The airline staff had no idea what was coming. "Excuse me, Mom," one of the attendants said, trying to sound polite. "We have a small problem with your son's ticket. He's supposed to be in coach, not first class." Tyrell's mom raised an eyebrow, her eyes narrowing slightly. "My son," she said, her voice calm but firm, "is not a mistake." She turned to Tyrell and smiled, her eyes full of reassurance. "Tyrell, honey, are you okay?" Tyrell nodded, though he still felt uncomfortable with the attention. He couldn't understand why they were treating him like this. His mom was right here, and everything was fine. Why didn't they believe him? But before his mom could speak further, one of the staff members suddenly snapped at Tyrell, saying, "You can't sit here. First class is for adults, not children like you." Tyrell looked at the woman, confused. He hadn't said anything wrong. Why was she so angry at him? His mom's face remained calm, but there was a flash of something dangerous in her eyes. She stepped forward, standing tall. She was used to being in control, and this situation was no different. "You're telling my son he can't sit in a seat that's been paid for?" she asked, her voice low but sharp. The whole airport seemed to go quiet for a moment, as if waiting for what would happen next. The attendant glanced nervously at her, not expecting this kind of challenge. "I'm just following protocol," she muttered, shifting uncomfortably. "You're following protocol by disrespecting a paying customer and his child?" Tyrell's mom asked, her voice growing more assertive. She took a deep breath, and for a moment, her calm demeanor made the situation feel even more intense. Everyone in the terminal was watching now, the tension rising in the air. The staff exchanged uneasy looks, but no one spoke. They knew something was wrong, but none of them knew exactly how to fix it. "Let's go, Tyrell," his mom said softly, her hand now gently guiding him toward the plane. She walked ahead, her heels clicking loudly against the floor. Tyrell felt a little better, but the way everyone was staring at him made him feel small again. As they approached the door to the plane, the staff tried to stop them again. "Wait," one of them called out. "We'll need to check your seat assignment first." Tyrell's mom didn't stop walking. She turned her head just slightly and said, "It's already checked, and you have all the information you need." She handed them a piece of paper, her business card. The workers glanced at it, their eyes widening in disbelief. Before they could react, Tyrell's mom stepped onto the plane, her hand still on Tyrell's shoulder. They passed the gate and moved into the narrow hallway leading to the seats, but Tyrell could feel the eyes of the staff following them. Everyone was still watching, as if they couldn't believe what had just happened. When they reached first class, the flight attendants there seemed equally surprised to see them. Tyrell's mom looked at them calmly. "My son will be sitting here," she said, pointing to the seat by the window. The flight attendant seemed unsure. But this seat is reserved for." I know who it's reserved for, she said, cutting him off. It's reserved for my son. There was an awkward silence. The staff exchanged uncertain looks. Tyrell's mom raised an eyebrow. Is there a problem? She asked, her tone dripping with unspoken authority. The flight attendants hesitated, clearly unsure of what to say. They had never had a situation like this before, and they were beginning to realize that this wasn't just any passenger. This was someone important. One of the attendants cleared his throat and spoke in a low voice. No, ma'am. There's no problem. Please, make yourself comfortable. Tyrell's mom nodded and smiled, her expression cool and collected. She gently helped Tyrell into the seat and tucked him in, smoothing his shirt over his lap. He glanced up at her, still a little nervous but comforted by her calm presence. You're safe, baby, she whispered. As the door to the plane closed and the last few passengers boarded, the staff outside the plane began to murmur. The woman who had first questioned Tyrell was now speaking to another attendant, and Tyrell overheard fragments of their conversation. She can't be. That's impossible. As Tyrell settled into his seat, the soft hum of the airplane began to fill the cabin. The flight attendants continued to scurry around, checking the safety equipment and making sure everything was in place. But the tension in the air was palpable. It was like everyone knew something big had just happened, but no one knew how to react. Tyrell stared out the window, trying to push his nerves aside. It felt so strange to be sitting here, so grown up, so important. He had never flown first class before. He'd seen it on TV, but never imagined he would be sitting here one day. His mom had promised him this special trip as a reward for working hard in school, but now, all he could think about was what had just happened. The way the staff had treated him, the way they had doubted him, made him feel small and out of place. His mom sat next to him, looking calm as always, but Tyrell could see a small tightness around her eyes, the only sign that something was wrong. She had been the picture of confidence when she stepped onto the plane, but deep down, Tyrell knew his mom had been upset by the way he had been treated. He glanced up at her. Mom, why were they so mean to me? He asked softly. His mom smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile that told Tyrell she was holding something back, something she didn't want him to see. Some people are just quick to judge, honey, but don't let it bother you. You've worked hard, and you deserve to be here. We deserve to be here. Tyrell nodded, but the words didn't feel like enough. He wanted to understand more, wanted to know why some people treated others so badly. He had heard his mom talk about things like this before, but now, it felt real. He had felt the sting of judgment, and it hurt. Just then, the pilot's voice came over the loudspeaker, interrupting his thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. We are waiting on a few final checks before we can take off. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Tyrell's heart sank. He looked out the window again. The airport seemed so far away now, but it still felt like everything was happening too slowly. He just wanted to get to New York and forget all of this. But things weren't going to be that easy. As the minutes passed, the sounds of the cabin grew quieter, but the tension continued to build. The flight attendants went back and forth, whispering to each other, their eyes often flicking toward Tyrell and his mom. Tyrell's mom sat with her arms folded, watching them, her eyes sharp, never missing a move. Tyrell felt like the whole plane was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Then, out of nowhere, the flight attendants gathered at the front of the cabin, speaking in low voices. Tyrell couldn't hear exactly what they were saying, but it was obvious they were upset. One of them, he had seen her earlier, the one who had been the most rude to him, glanced over at him, and then quickly turned away. Mom, Tyrell whispered, what's going on? Why are they still talking about us? His mom didn't answer right away. She looked at the flight attendants for a long moment, her face unreadable. Then she leaned down toward Tyrell and said quietly, don't worry, baby. Let them talk. Some people don't like change, and they're just not used to seeing someone like me. Tyrell frowned. Someone like you? He asked, confused. His mom smiled again, but this time it was a little more real. Some people don't expect to see someone who looks like me running an airline, but they'll get used to it. Tyrell didn't quite understand, but he trusted his mom. He knew she was strong, and she could handle anything. After all, she had always been the one to protect him. He just wished he could help her in some way too. But before he could say anything else, the loudspeaker crackled again. The voice of the captain came through, but this time it sounded much more serious. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid we've encountered a bit of a problem," the pilot said. "We need to address a serious issue with the flight staff before we can depart. Please remain in your seats as we work to resolve this situation." Tyrell's heart skipped a beat. What was going on? He looked up at his mom, but she wasn't looking at him anymore. Her gaze was fixed on the flight attendants at the front of the cabin. Tyrell could see the tension in her body, but she didn't show any fear. She was in control. He could tell by the way she sat, straight-backed, calm, powerful. The minutes dragged on. Tyrell felt like time was moving slower than ever. His mind raced with questions. Was the flight going to be canceled? Would they get into trouble because of what had happened earlier? But then, the doors to the cockpit opened, and the captain stepped out, walking toward the flight attendants. He was tall, wearing a serious look on his face, but when he saw Tyrell's mom, he stopped. "Ma'am," the captain said, his voice polite but firm, "there's been a misunderstanding with your son's ticket. We need tow." His mom stood up before he could finish his sentence, her gaze sharp and unyielding. "There's no misunderstanding," she said firmly. "My son is seated where he belongs. And so am I." The captain hesitated, looking at her for a moment, and then he nodded. "Of course, ma'am," he said quietly. "I'll take care of it." Tyrell didn't know exactly what was happening, but he could feel the tension beginning to melt away. His mom had just taken control of the entire situation. Everyone had been so focused on questioning him, and now his mom was showing them who was in charge. As the captain turned to leave, Tyrell looked up at his mom again. She smiled at him, the first real smile he had seen in a while. "Don't worry, baby," she said softly. "We're going to get through this, together." But deep down, Tyrell couldn't shake the feeling that something even bigger was about to happen. As the plane sat on the tarmac, waiting for the final checks to be completed, Tyrell began to feel a sense of calm wash over him. His mom had taken control, and he knew that everything would be okay. The flight attendants had stopped talking in hushed voices and now moved around the cabin, preparing for takeoff. But there was still an unsettling feeling in the air. Tyrell could sense that something wasn't quite finished. The crew's reactions had been too strange, too tense. There was something more going on, something his mom wasn't telling him. Tyrell turned to look at her again. She was sitting with her arms crossed, her gaze fixed on the window, her face calm and composed. But he could tell that something was bothering her. He had seen her handle difficult situations before, but this time it felt different. She wasn't just dealing with a small problem. She was dealing with something much bigger. A few moments later, the captain returned to the front of the cabin. This time, his expression was even more serious than before. He didn't make eye contact with anyone. Instead, he glanced quickly at the flight attendants and then moved toward Tyrell's mom. Tyrell watched closely, his curiosity growing. What was going on? Why hadn't they left yet? It had been over an hour since the plane was supposed to take off, and the tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. The captain stopped in front of Tyrell's mom. He cleared his throat nervously. "Ma'am," he said, his voice lower than before, "I've spoken with the airline's head office, and, well, we have some surprising information about your reservation." Tyrell's mom looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "What kind of information?" she asked, her voice cool and controlled, though there was a slight edge to it. The captain hesitated for a moment, clearly uncomfortable with whatever was coming. "It turns out, your ticket and your son's seat were booked through an exclusive private arrangement with the airline. We were unaware of the specifics before, but now, we know you are." He paused again, clearly searching for the right words. Tyrell's mom didn't let him finish. "Just say it," she said calmly. "You know exactly who I am, and you know exactly what I'm capable of." The captain gulped. His face turned a little pale, and Tyrell could see the shift in his demeanor. He seemed to realize that he had said something wrong, something that had triggered the wrong response. We were not aware of your personal connections with the airline, ma'am. Your status, the captain said, stammering a little. "I'm terribly sorry for the misunderstanding. If I'd known." "If you'd known what?" Tyrell's mom cut him off. "That I run this airline. That I own it. That this plane is mine. And so is everything on it." The captain looked stunned. He opened his mouth to speak but couldn't find the words. Tyrell's eyes widened as the realization hit him. His mom wasn't just any regular passenger. She wasn't just a businesswoman. She owned the airline. It was as if the world suddenly shifted around him. He had always known his mom was powerful. She had a presence that made people listen when she spoke, a calmness that could make any situation under control. But he had no idea just how powerful she really was. Tyrell's mom stood up, her posture straight and commanding. She looked around the cabin, making sure every flight attendant was paying attention. "I am the CEO of this airline," she said loudly, her voice echoing through the stillness of the plane. "I've built this company from the ground up, and I will not tolerate this kind of behavior from my staff. Not towards me, and especially not towards my son." The flight attendants exchanged worried glances, and the captain stepped back, visibly shaking. He opened his mouth to apologize, but Tyrell's mom held up her hand, stopping him. "No more apologies," she said firmly. "You've made your mistake, and now we need to fix it." Tyrell's mind was racing. His mom was the CEO of an entire airline. He had always known she was important, but this was something else entirely. This was a power that most people would never even dream of. And yet she had been so calm, so controlled, as if she was used to being underestimated. The captain nodded quickly. "We'll get you and your son seated immediately in the best seats, ma'am. There's no need for any more confusion." His mom glanced at Tyrell, a small but reassuring smile playing at the corner of her lips. "Thank you," she said coldly, then turned to him. "Tyrell, honey, it looks like we're finally ready to take off." As Tyrell's mom sat back down, he took a deep breath. It felt surreal. Everything had changed in just a few minutes. He had come to the airport thinking he was just another kid flying on a plane. But now he realized that his mom was someone no one could ignore. She had the ability to command respect, and everyone around her was starting to see it. But as the plane finally began to taxi down the runway, Tyrell couldn't help but feel a strange mixture of emotions. On one hand, he was proud of his mom for standing up for him and showing everyone who she really was. But on the other hand, he felt uneasy. He hadn't expected all of this attention, all of this drama. He just wanted to get to New York and enjoy the trip. As the plane lifted off the ground, Tyrell leaned back in his seat, looking out the window at the city below. He felt like a new chapter of his life had just begun, but he wasn't sure if he was ready for everything that came with it. The flight attendants finally started moving around the cabin again, and the rest of the passengers settled into their seats. Tyrell's mom was already looking over some documents, her focus back on work. But Tyrell couldn't stop thinking about the words the captain had said earlier. The plane soared higher, leaving the city behind and cutting through the clouds. Tyrell stared out the window, his mind still racing. The world outside seemed so peaceful, so calm, but inside the cabin, everything felt different. His mom was the CEO of the airline, and he still couldn't fully wrap his head around it. It was like everything he thought he knew about his life had just been turned upside down. As the plane leveled off, The flight attendants moved through the cabin, offering drinks and snacks to the passengers. But Tyrell hardly noticed. His mom was sitting next to him, her eyes focused on a stack of papers. She was still as calm as ever, but Tyrell could tell she was thinking deeply about something. She hadn't said much since they boarded the plane, but Tyrell could sense that she was planning something. Something big. "Mom," Tyrell said softly, breaking the silence. "Why didn't you tell me? About the airline?" His mom didn't look up at him right away. She kept flipping through the papers, her fingers moving quickly over the pages. After a moment, she finally looked at him, her expression still unreadable. "I didn't want to burden you, baby," she said quietly. "I wanted you to focus on being a kid. I didn't want you to feel like you had to live up to anything." Tyrell frowned, confused. "But I am your kid. I should know, right?" His mom smiled, but it was a sad smile. "You're more than just my kid, Tyrell. You're a part of something much bigger, and I didn't want to put that weight on your shoulders." Tyrell's mind was spinning. "But if you own the airline, why? Why did they treat me like that? Why didn't they listen to me?" His mom sighed deeply and set the papers down on her lap. She looked at him, her eyes softening. "Because people like to judge others based on what they can see. They don't always know who they're dealing with. They didn't know who you were, who we were, and they made a mistake. But I'm used to it." Tyrell leaned back in his seat, trying to take it all in. His mom had worked so hard to build her company, and now it seemed like everyone was trying to tear it down. He couldn't understand why they would judge her, or him, just because of the way they looked. Why couldn't people see beyond the surface? "Mom, I don't get it," he said, his voice small. "Why didn't you tell anyone about us? Why keep it a secret?" His mom paused, her fingers tracing the edge of the papers in her lap. She looked out the window for a long moment before answering, her voice soft but steady. "Because I didn't want to be treated differently. I didn't want people to think I was only successful because of who I am, or who my family is. I wanted to make it on my own. I wanted people to see me for me, not just for my name or my last name." Tyrell nodded slowly. It made sense in a way. His mom had always taught him to work hard, to earn everything he had. She'd never wanted him to take anything for granted. But still, the world seemed so much more complicated than he had ever imagined. As the plane continued to fly, Tyrell thought about everything his mom had said. He thought about the way she had stood up for him at the airport, how she had faced down the staff without hesitation. He was proud of her, more proud than he had ever been. But he was also scared. Scared of what people might do if they found out who she really was. Scared of the pressure that would come with being part of such an important family. The flight attendants came around again, offering drinks, but Tyrell barely noticed them. His mind was elsewhere. His mom was different from the other moms at school. She wasn't just an ordinary person. She was someone with power, with influence. And that power had a price. "Mom," Tyrell asked quietly, "how did you get all this? I mean, how did you build this airline?" His mom's eyes softened, and she sat back in her seat, looking out the window again. "It wasn't easy," she said slowly. "I started from nothing, Tyrell. I came from a family that didn't have much, but I had a dream. I worked hard, every day. I didn't let anyone tell me I couldn't do it. I had to prove myself time and time again. And when I finally got a chance, I took it. But it wasn't just about business. It was about people, too. You have to understand people, how they think, how they act. And that's how you make your mark." Tyrell listened intently, his eyes wide. He had always known his mom was smart, but now he saw how much more there was to her story. She wasn't just a businesswoman. She was a survivor. She had fought for everything she had, and she had done it without anyone's help. He realized now just how strong she really was. "You've always taught me to do my best," Tyrell said softly. "To never give up. I didn't realize you were teaching me to be strong like you." His mom smiled, her eyes softening with pride. "You're stronger than you know, Tyrell. You just have to believe in yourself. And remember, family always has each other's backs. No matter what. Tyrell smiled, feeling the weight of his mom's words sink in. He had always been proud of his mom, but now he understood just how incredible she really was. She wasn't just his mom. She was someone who had built an empire. And that empire wasn't just a business. It was a legacy, one that would carry on long after they were both gone. As the plane descended toward New York, Tyrell looked out the window once more. The bright city lights below twinkled like stars scattered across the earth. He had never been to such a big city before, and it felt both exciting and overwhelming. He could sense his mom's excitement too, but it wasn't the same kind of excitement that other people had when they were about to land in a new place. For his mom, this was home. This was business, and she was already thinking about her next move. Tyrell tried to focus on the view, but his mind kept drifting back to everything his mom had told him. She had worked hard to build her empire. She had fought battles he could never imagine. And now, the world knew who she was. People on the plane had been shocked when they realized who she really was, and Tyrell could feel that same shock echoing in his own heart. What was life going to be like now that he knew the truth? The plane touched down smoothly, and Tyrell felt his stomach do a little flip. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. They were about to step into a world that was so different from anything he had ever known. The doors opened, and the flight attendants moved quickly to prepare the plane for disembarkation. Tyrell's mom stood up, already gathering her things. She had this calm confidence about her, as if she had done this 1,000 times before. But there was something in her eyes, something that told Tyrell that she knew the challenges ahead would not be easy. People would test her, challenge her, and try to bring her down. But she wasn't afraid. She never had been. "Tyrell, stay close to me," she said, her voice low but firm. "There's going to be a lot of attention once we get off this plane. Some people may try to get close to us, but don't let them. We have a plan." Tyrell nodded, his heart racing. He didn't know what the plan was, but he trusted his mom. She had always known exactly what to do, and he had a feeling that this was just another one of those times. As they left the plane and entered the airport terminal, Tyrell immediately felt the shift in the air. The moment they stepped through the door, people started to stare. A few whispered to each other, pointing at his mom, and Tyrell could hear bits and pieces of their conversation. "Is that her? The CEO of the airline? I thought she was just a regular businesswoman. She's even more powerful than I thought." Tyrell felt his cheeks burn. He had never been the center of attention like this before, and it made him uncomfortable. He just wanted to get to their destination without causing a scene. But his mom didn't seem bothered at all. In fact, she seemed to welcome the attention. She walked confidently through the terminal, her steps firm and sure. "Mom," Tyrell whispered, "why are they staring at us like that?" His mom gave him a small, knowing smile. "Because they don't understand, Tyrell. They don't know what it's like to be in our shoes. But they'll figure it out soon enough." As they walked past the crowds, Tyrell noticed a few people start to follow them. There were cameras flashing in the distance, and Tyrell could hear the sound of someone shouting his mom's name. "Miss Carter, Miss Carter," a voice called. His mom didn't flinch. She didn't stop or look around. She just kept walking, her head held high. Tyrell's heart was racing as the crowd grew thicker, the attention more intense. His mom seemed to glide through it effortlessly, as if she were in complete control of the situation. But Tyrell could see the way her eyes flicked from side to side, always alert, always aware. She knew this world better than anyone, and Tyrell realized just how much she had prepared him for this moment without even meaning to. They reached the VIP area of the airport, and Tyrell's mom was immediately surrounded by a few of her colleagues. Tyrell stood close to her, feeling a strange mixture of pride and unease. He couldn't help but notice how everyone respected her, how they deferred to her in a way he had never seen before. She wasn't just a mother. She was a leader. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding, and Tyrell stepped into the bustling office building. The air was thick with the hum of busy conversations and the click-clack of high heels on marble floors. People were rushing past, their eyes glued to their phones or papers, moving with purpose. Tyrell felt like he had stepped into another world, one that seemed much bigger and much faster than the life he had known. He followed his mom as she moved confidently through the crowd. She was a figure of strength, her presence commanding the room without her needing to raise her voice. People turned to look when she passed, some nodding their heads in respect, others staring in awe. Tyrell couldn't help but feel both proud and small at the same time. His mom was a leader here, someone everyone knew and respected. But he still felt like a kid in a world full of adults. They entered a large, glass-walled conference room, where a long table sat in the center, surrounded by several chairs. At the far end of the table, a group of well-dressed men and women were already seated, waiting. As Tyrell and his mom entered, everyone stood up in unison, their eyes fixed on her. The respect in their gazes made Tyrell feel like his mom was a queen, and he was her loyal subject. "Good afternoon, everyone," his mom said, her voice calm but commanding. "I see we're all ready to get started." The others nodded and sat back down, but there was a tense energy in the room, a quiet undercurrent that Tyrell couldn't ignore. He sat quietly beside his mom, watching as she took her place at the head of the table. This was where the real power was, he realized. The decisions that shaped the future were made here, in rooms like this, and his mom was at the center of it all. A tall man with sharp features and a stern expression spoke first. "Miss Carter," he said, his voice low and serious, "we need to discuss the latest figures. There's a growing concern about the airline's performance in the coming quarter. The competition is fierce, and if we don't make some changes, we'll be at risk." Tyrell's mom didn't flinch. She listened carefully, her hands resting lightly on the table. "I'm aware of the situation," she said, "but we're not going to panic. We're going to look at the numbers, evaluate our options, and come up with a plan. I didn't build this company by making rushed decisions." There was a brief silence as everyone in the room took in her words. The man who had spoken nodded slowly, but Tyrell could see the tension in his eyes. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by someone like Tyrell's mom. Another woman, who sat to the left of the tall man, spoke up next. "But we don't have time to waste, Ms. Carter. The market is changing, and if we don't act quickly, we could lose our edge." His mom's gaze was steady as she met the woman's eyes. "We will act, but we'll do it the right way, not by rushing into decisions based on fear." Tyrell was amazed at how his mom remained so calm. Here she was, surrounded by people who were clearly worried about the future of the company, and yet she seemed unshaken. She wasn't just their boss, she was their rock. They were all looking to her for guidance, and she wasn't backing down. But there was something more going on beneath the surface. Tyrell could feel it, the way the others seemed to push back against his mom's calm, the subtle challenges to her authority. He had never seen this side of the business world before, but he understood now that it wasn't just about making money. It was about power, influence, and control. As the meeting continued, Tyrell listened to the heated discussions that unfolded. Some of the ideas were bold, while others were conservative. But the tension never fully left the room. Every time his mom spoke, there was an undercurrent of resistance, a quiet push to test her leadership. Tyrell didn't fully understand all the details, but he could sense the power struggle. His mom was fighting for the future of the airline, and some people were willing to fight her for it. At one point, Tyrell couldn't take it anymore. He leaned over to his mom and whispered, "Are they always like this?" His mom didn't take her eyes off the table as she answered him. "This is the game, Tyrell. People don't always agree, and not everyone is as loyal as they seem. But I've been doing this for a long time. I know how to handle it." Tyrell wasn't sure if he believed her. He had seen how some of the people in the room had looked at her, not with respect, but with something else, something colder, more calculating. It was as if they were waiting for her to make a mistake, to show weakness. But his mom wasn't giving them that chance. She stood firm, confident in her decisions, even when they were questioning her every move. The meeting went on for hours, and by the time it was over, Tyrell was exhausted. He hadn't said much during the discussions, preferring to stay out of the way. But he had learned a lot. His mom wasn't just a leader. She was a survivor, navigating a world full of hidden battles and silent wars. The people around her weren't just colleagues. They were competitors, each one hoping to climb higher by knocking someone else down. As they left the room, Tyrell could see the weight of the day on his mom's face. She wasn't showing it outwardly, but Tyrell could sense that she was tired. Tired of the constant pressure, the endless challenges. He wanted to ask her if she was okay, but he knew she wouldn't answer him the way he wanted. They walked through the halls of the building, heading toward the elevator. Tyrell's mom paused for a moment, looking out of the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city below. The lights were still shining, but now they seemed distant, far away. "It's not easy, Tyrell," she said, her voice soft but strong. "But this is the life I've chosen, and I'm not going to let anyone take it from me."